Hola a todos, espero que ustedes se encuentren bien. Today we are going to review the CSEC Spanish May June 2018 Paper 2. Mhm. So let me share my screen with you guys. All right, here we go. Section 1, the first situation. You have done very well in your examinations. Write the note you received from your aunt congratulating you and promising to do something for you. So you need two pieces of information. You need to write a congratulatory message. So how do we say congratulations? Well, there are many ways, but I chose one, which is going to be, which was enhorabuena. Mm-hmm. But you have felicidades, felicitaciones. You can even say buen trabajo, good job. So there are a multitude of ways. And then you have to promise to do something for your nephew, right? Or niece, depending on the gender, it doesn't matter. But you would use the future tense. You could use the near future or you could use the simple future. So, te voy a comprar un coche. She must have a lot of money. So you have to congratulate your niece or nephew, and then you have to make them a promise, okay? B, you wish to borrow an item from one of your classmates. Write the note you sent to him or her making the request. Okay, so I said, ¿Puedes prestarme un bolígrafo, por favor? Can you lend me a pen, please? Now, the word lend in Spanish is prestar. Now, you could also say, ¿Puedes? Wait, hold on. Hold on. Let me look at this again. You wish to borrow an item from one of your classes. No, you say, right. So if I wanted to use borrow, I would have to change the subject. So I could say, ¿Puedo pedir prestado un bolígrafo, por favor? So that means, can I borrow a pen, please? So I could use pedir prestado, which means to borrow. All right. Now, if you don't know how to say either word, you can even use usar or utilizar to use. So puedo usar tu bolígrafo, right? Can I use your pen, right? I could also put poder in the conditional and say podrías, right? Could you? Podrías prestarme un bolígrafo? Could you lend me a pen? That is more polite, right? So there are lots of ways that we can tackle this. Okay. C, you send a short email to Anita informing her of a particular incident and the time it occurred. Write the email that you send. So obviously, whatever event, it could be a match, it could be a fire, what have you. But you have to mention that particular incident and the time at which it occurred. So, la pelea sucedió a las 8. So the fight took place, or the fight occurred at 8 o'clock. D, Manuel is unable to go on a field trip with his class. Write the note his mother sends to his teacher, apologizing and giving a reason. Two things. You need to apologize and you must provide a reason, right? So I said, lo siento mucho, pero no puede ir porque tiene cita. I'm very sorry, but he is unable to go or he cannot go because he has an appointment. Now, you have to remember that you're speaking from the mother's perspective, so you have to be careful with the verb conjugations. I could say, perdón, that's another way to say sorry, but you have to apologize and provide a reason. E, Your cousin who lives overseas is returning home after spending a vacation with you. Write a farewell note to her expressing how you feel about her leaving. Okay, two pieces of information. You have to bid her farewell, and you can do that in a variety of ways, followed by an expression of how you feel. So I said, hasta la vista. So that's my farewell note. And I said, me siento triste. I feel sad. So I feel sad about her leaving. Hasta la vista, me siento triste. Ujú. Muy bien. F, your brother has gone out and leaves a note informing you of where he went and why. Write the note, write the note he leaves. I probably left off the he, but you understand. So I said, fui al supermercado para comprar leche. So I went to the supermarket to buy milk. So I said where I went. So you have to obviously use the past tense, the preterite, to be specific. Fui al supermercado para comprar leche. So I went to the supermarket to buy milk. G, your sister is purchasing a gift for your mother. She sends you a text message with two pictures of two items. Write the message you send to her, stating your preference with a reason. Okay, so they are two items. So you have to choose one. Prefiero el monedero porque sé que le gusta el rojo. So you stated your preference with a reason. Another way you could have stated your preference would have been to use gustar. I could have said me gusta el monedero, right? But I said prefiero el monedero porque sé que le gusta el rojo. I prefer the purse because I know that she likes red, right? The color red. H, you're going out with friends. Write the note your father leaves for you, instructing you of two things you should not do. Okay? So this is the imperative. This is a command. So I said, no deberías tomar ni fumar. So you should not drink or smoke. Remember that if you're using two, you want to introduce another negative option, you have to use ni and you can't use o, right? Because it's negative. Now, if I wanted to put this in the pure imperative form, I would say no tomes ni fumes, right? Do not drink or smoke. But sometimes students encounter difficulty with the imperative when it comes to the conjugations. So a safe structure would be to use deber in the conditional followed by the infinitive, right? So that also achieves the purpose. I, you are the secretary of a club and have scheduled a meeting. Write the email you sent to the club members, reminding them of two details about the meeting. Okay, so two meetings. Two details. La reunión será mañana en el auditorio. Now, let's say you did not know how to say meeting. You do not have to put meeting. You could just say será mañana en el auditorio because we know you're talking about meetings. I find students stress themselves out unnecessarily because they may not know certain words within the situation. But if you study it, you would realize that you actually don't need to know the words because you only need to state information that expresses or responds to the situation. And sometimes that does not require you to know all the words, all all the keywords, I suppose, right? You don't need to know how to say meeting. You could just say será mañana en el auditorio. So the meeting will be tomorrow in the hall. So I said when the meeting is and where the meeting is going to be held. So those were my two details. J, Rosario has invited you to an event to an activity. Write the note you sent to her accepting the invitation and offering to assist with something. How do you accept the invitation? I said, iré, I will go. y te voy a ayudar con las decoraciones. And I am going to help you with the decorations. So I accepted the invitation and I offered to assist with the decorations. All right, so that concludes the first section. Now we move on to section 2, the letter. What is the scenario? You are on a student exchange program overseas. Write a letter to your Mexican friend in which you include 1. How you were selected to participate in the program. 2. Information about the country you are presently visiting and your host family. 3. Activities in which you have participated during your stay. And 4. How you will promote the exchange program upon your return home. So, we get the formalities out of the way. The date, lunes 23 de marzo de 2026. Okay, so we're writing this to our Mexican friend and we have chosen to call him Juan. All right. So again, more formalities. Hola, tanto tiempo. Hello, long time no see. Espero que todo vaya bien. I hope everything is going well. Now we get into the purpose of the letter. Te escribo para contarte sobre mi experiencia en un programa de intercambio en Inglaterra. So I'm writing you to tell you about my experience on an exchange program in England. All right. So I've introduced the purpose. Now let me respond to the first cue, which is how you were selected to participate in the program. Conseguí esta oportunidad porque saqué las mejores notas en mis exámenes el trimestre pasado y gané muchas medallas en el día de deportes. So this is how I was chosen. I obtained this opportunity because I got the best grades in my exam. I got the best grades. Do you say on my? I got the best grades on my exams, yes, on my exams last term, and I won many medals on sports day, right? So that was how I was selected. So the next cue is going to be information about the country you are presently visiting and your host family. So en Inglaterra me quedo con una familia de 3 personas, el padre, la madre y su hijo. In England, I'm staying with a family of 3 persons, the father, the mother, and their son. So I proceed to describe them. Son muy acogedores y amables, so they're very welcoming and friendly. Viven en un barrio seguro donde todo el mundo se conoce. They live in a safe neighborhood where everyone knows each other, right? So the third cue is going to be activities in which you have participated during your stay. Okay, so hasta ahora, thus far, he entrenado en el estadio. I've trained in the stadium, or at the stadium. No, I've trained at the stadium. He visitado algunos sitios de interés. I visited some places of interest. Y he asistido a algunas clases en un colegio. And I have attended some classes at a secondary school or high school. Esta experiencia me ha enseñado mucho sobre Europa, right? So this experience has taught me a lot about Europe. All right, and the last cue is going to be how you will promote the exchange program upon your return home. Creo que este programa es una buena oportunidad para cualquier alumno, así que voy a promocionarlo en Instagram cuando regrese. I believe or I think that this program is a good opportunity for any student, so I'm going to promote it on Instagram when I return. Quiero animar a los alumnos a trabajar más duro. I want to encourage students to work harder. Espero verte pronto. I hope to see you soon. Abrazos, hugs, Javier. And that obviously Javier was the person that I utilized. My word count was 139. Muy bien. All right. Section 3, contextual dialogue. So what is the scenario? You and your friend Raul are talking about a vacation from which his family just returned. And here are the cues. 1, a discussion of where his family went. 2, a description of the hotel where they stayed. 3, things they saw and did. 4, information about the nightlife. And 5, plans for next year's vacation. Okay. So complete the dialogue. And of course, never mind, there's some accents missing on 2, but yeah, that happens sometimes. Yes, missing some accents on the 2, but just imagine that there were accents on the 2. Yeah, just imagine that. All right. So, ¿cómo estuvieron tus vacaciones con tu familia? So, how was the vacation with your family? So, to know what Raul is supposed to say in the first part, you have to skip to see what I say afterwards. Qué magnífico. Oh, magnificent. Siempre he querido visitar México y me dicen que esa ciudad es fantástica. ¿Cómo era el hotel? I've always wanted to visit Mexico and they tell me that that city is fantastic. How was the hotel? So obviously, Raul's response has to be talking about having gone to Mexico. That's obvious because he says because I say siempre he querido visitar Mexico. So I will always want to visit Mexico. So you could say came because the question is how was the vacation? So you have to respond to that first. How was the vacation? Lo pasamos muy bien. We had a good time, and then you have to mention where you went. So fuimos a Mexico. So we had a good time, a very good time. We went to Mexico. Continuing. So the last question that I asked was, what was the hotel like? ¿Cómo era el hotel? So I said, no. I have to skip to see what I said after. Todo incluido es excelente y la proximidad a la playa aún mejor. ¿Qué cosas hicieron ahí? So, all inclusive is excellent and the proximity to the beach even better. What what stuff did you do there? Now, this response is going to tell you what you need to say, what Raul needs to say, because in the last part, I asked him what was the hotel like. So obviously he has to describe the hotel, but he has to use these details that I say afterward. So I have to say that the hotel was all inclusive and it was close to the beach. So those were the 2 pieces of information that were mandatory. So I said el hotel era todo incluido y estaba cerca de la playa. The hotel was all inclusive and it was close to the beach. So, right. So then following on, I ask him, ¿Qué cosas hicieron ahí? What stuff did you do there? So, what do I say afterwards? Me dicen que hay mucho que ver en Cancún y estoy seguro que ustedes hicieron buenas compras. ¿Y qué tal la vida nocturna? They tell me that there's a lot to see in Cancun, and I am certain that you had good shopping. So what about the nightlife, or how was the nightlife? So obviously I have to talk about what I would have seen. So talk about some of the attractions. So I said, visitamos muchos lugares de interés y las vistas eran espectaculares. So we visited many places of interest and the views were spectacular. That's right. And following on, he asked about the nightlife. Right? So to know what I am to say, what Raul is to say, I have to skip to see what I say afterward. Parece que hay mucha vida nocturna, pero claro, no pudiste ir a los bares. ¿Fuiste al cine? So I say it seems that there is a lot of nightlife, or let's say a vibrant nightlife. But of course, you were not able to go to the bars. Did you go to the cinema? So once he asks me about the nightlife, I would have to express that or give him the impression that there was a vibrant nightlife, but I was not able to go to the bars because he said, pero claro, of course you were not able to go to the bars. So I have to say both of those details. Había muchas discotecas, pero no fui a ninguna de ellas. Okay. There were many discoteca nightclubs, but I did not go to any of them. Mhm. Because because I say you were not able to go to the bars. Mhm. So I could have also said, no pude ir a los bares. I could have also said that, but this response would suffice, okay? Then he asked, ¿Fuiste al cine? Did you go to the cinema? So to know what Raúl is to say, we have to skip. Claro, no entiendes mucho español, así que sería difícil para ti. Of course, you do not understand much Spanish, so it would be difficult for you. Entonces, ¿qué te gustó más de la vida nocturna? So, what did you like most about the nightlife? So when I asked him if he went to the cinema, he obviously has to say no because he doesn't understand much Spanish, because that's what I say afterwards. So I said no porque no sabía mucho español. No, because I did not know much Spanish. Mhm. So it's obvious that any response that conveys that idea would be fine. Okay? You could also say no porque no entendí mucho español or anything like that. Right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So then he continues and I ask him what did he like most about the nightlife. So in order to know what what Raúl is to say, I have to skip. Claro, like that's like a laughing, that is a expression of amusement. Siempre estás pensando en tu estómago. You're always thinking about your stomach. Pero ¿qué más hiciste? But what more did you do? So when I asked him about the nightlife, my response my response talked about him liking his stomach. So I obviously had to talk about the food. I had to pay special attention to the food. So I said, me gustaron los restaurantes porque las comidas estaban deliciosas. So I liked the restaurants because the meals or the food was delicious. So that's why he laughed and said, of course, you're always thinking about your stomach. But then I say he when I mean it should be me. But anyways, but what more did you do? All right. So again, skip a line and see what I say. See, yes. Estos hoteles ofrecen espectáculos fenomenales. Okay. Parece que lo pasaron bomba ahí. So these hotels offer phenomenal shows. Parece que lo pasaron bomba ahí. So it seems that you all had a wonderful time there. Pasarlo bomba is another way of saying pasarlo bien, but it's just more informal. Y a dónde van el año que viene? So where are you going next year? So obviously, when I asked him what more did you do? What more did you do? I would have to tell him that I attended a concert at the hotel. I would have to say that because I said afterwards these hotels offer spectacular shows. So asistimos a un espectáculo en el hotel. fue fenomenal e inolvidable. So we attended a show at the hotel. It was phenomenal and unforgettable. Mhm. And then the last question, the last part of my response, I asked him, ¿A dónde van el año que viene? So where are you going next year? Right? So I have to skip. I have to skip to see what I say. Excelente idea. Y con parientes ahí, no tendrán que pagar hotel. Excellent idea. And with relatives there, you do not have to pay for hotel. Ojalá pudiera ir con ustedes para ver esas cascadas maravillosas. So hopefully, I wish I could go with you all to see those marvelous waterfalls, cascadas. So it's telling you what you need to say. Excellent idea. So when I ask him where he's going next year, I would have to say that they're going to a country in which they have family. Because I say, con parientes ahí, with relatives there, will not have to pay for a hotel. So because you have family in this country, you don't have to, seek accommodation at a hotel, you know. So I said, es verdad, vamos a visitar a nuestra familia en Canadá. The country doesn't matter, to be honest. That's just an example. So we're going to visit our family in Canada. Tenemos que ver esas cascadas maravillosas. So we have to see those wonderful and marvelous waterfalls. Yeah. And you should mention that at the end because, yes, that is a part that would be important. So you have to mention that you're going to a country in which you have family and what you're going something that, not something, or that you want to see waterfalls. Because that's what I said afterwards to end off, right? All right, so my word count was 80. Yeah. And section 4, a worthy agreement, reading comprehension. Lucita era una estudiante aplicada y trabajaba duro en sus clases porque quería obtener un buen empleo para ayudar a su familia. Su madre, viuda, hacía 4 años luchaba para mantener sus 3 hijos. Ella trabajaba como cajera en un supermercado y no ganaba mucho dinero. Este año, la clase de Lucita estaba planeando una visita educativa al extranjero. Lucita quería ir, pero sabía lo imposible que sería a causa de la situación económica de su familia. La profesora Alameda decidió que iba a tratar de ayudar a Lucita. Escribió a muchas compañías pidiendo donaciones, explicándoles la situación de Lucita. Desafortunadamente, las compañías respondieron que no daban donaciones para viajes educativos. La profesora Alameda se acordó de una anciana rica de su vecindad que necesitaba a alguien que pasara unas horas leyéndole los fines de semana. Lucita fue con la profesora a visitar a la anciana. Hablaron con ella y acordaron que la mujer le pagaría el viaje y Lucita iría los fines de semana leyéndole a ella por 2 horas. Al escuchar las buenas noticias, Lucita empezó a llorar y abrazó fuertemente a su maestra. Nunca olvidaría esa oportunidad. So, questions. A, what kind of student was Lucita? So it said at the start, era una estudiante aplicada. That means hardworking. So she was hardworking. Let's say for scenario's sake, you did not know what aplicada meant. Look at what follows. Y trabajaba duro en sus clases porque, right. So, trabajar means to work. So if you said that she worked hard, that's also correct. So that was context clues if you did not know what aplicada meant. Mm-hmm. B, what was Lucita's goal? So that was mentioned afterwards. Quería obtener un buen empleo para ayudar a su familia. She wanted to get a good job, or she wanted to obtain a good job to help her family. Mm-hmm. C, what happened to Lucita's father? So it says su madre viuda hacía 4 años. So viuda means widow. So that means that her father died hacía 4 años, so 4 years ago. So her father passed away 4 years ago. You don't necessarily have to mention the time, but you have to say for sure that he died. Once you said that he died, you get the full marks, or you get the mark. Mhm. How did Lucita's mother provide for the family? So it says, ella trabajaba como cajera en un supermercado. So she worked as a cashier. Cajera is cashier at a supermarket. Mhm. All right. So what was Lucita's class planning this year? So este año, la clase de Lucita estaba planeando una visita educativa al extranjero. So this year, Lucita's class was planning an educational trip abroad. Mhm. Al extranjero, abroad. All right. And F, how did Professor Alameda, try to help Lucita? So la profesora Alameda decidió que iba a tratar de ayudar a Lucita. So the professor decided that she was going to try to help Lucita. She escribió a muchas compañías pidiendo donaciones. So she basically reached out to many companies asking for donations. So that was how she provided assistance. Mm-hmm. So she asked many companies for donations. So what kind of response did Professor Alameda get? So it says, desafortunadamente, unfortunately, las compañías respondieron que no daban donaciones para viajes educativos. Um, so the companies responded that they did not give donations for educational trips. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And H, or no H, what did Professor Alameda suddenly remember? Mm-hmm. So, la profesora Alameda se acordó, so that's the verb to remember, acordarse de, se acordó de una anciana rica de su vecindad que necesitaba a alguien que pasara unas horas leyéndole los fines de semana. So she remembered, or she suddenly remembered an elderly woman and who was rich that needed someone to spend some hours reading to her on weekends. So that was what she suddenly remembered. So she remembered that there was an elderly woman in the neighborhood that was rich and she needed someone to spend some hours reading to her on weekends. Right? What arrangement was made between Lucita and the other person? So what was the arrangement or what was the deal? Hablaron con ella y they agreed, que la mujer le pagaría el viaje y Lucita iría los fines de semana leyéndole a ella por 2 horas. So the deal was that Lucita would go to the woman's house and read to her on weekends for 2 hours in exchange for financing the trip. Mhm. So where is it? Right. So the elderly woman would pay for her trip once she read to her, or as long as she read to her for 2 hours on weekends. So the last question, what was Lucita's reaction to the arrangement? Explain. Okay, so the last part says, Al escuchar las buenas noticias, Lucita empezó a llorar y abrazó fuertemente a su maestra. So upon hearing the good news, Lucita began to cry and she gave her teacher a big hug. Mhm. Nunca olvidaría esa oportunidad. She would never forget that opportunity. All right. So basically, what was her reaction? She was obviously elated. You could say elated, relieved, excited, anything like that. And then you have to explain why, given that she cried and hugged her teacher. So the crying and hugging the teacher would express that relief as well as excitement because she would have been very, you know, she would have been afraid because she did not know if this would actually work. So once stated an emotion and justified it, you would, you would get your 3 marks. Okay, this brings us to the end. Ujú. Espero que ustedes hayan disfrutado de este video. Muchas gracias por ver y hasta la vista.